In last week's video, I went through 5 different ragas that use the modes of the major pentatonic scale. In this week's video, I'll be playing some different ragas that use that same pattern, but shifted so that it starts on a different note. And then I'll be using these ragas to demonstrate some melodic and rhythmic ideas that you can use to help to create tension and release in your phrasing. In Indian music, which is a modal style of music, it's the relationship between the note that you're playing and the root note that makes that note sound either consonant or harmonious or dissonant. That's why you'll always hear a drone being played underneath that has that root note in it, and it gives you a reference for your ears. It's movement from the dissonant notes to the consonant ones that's one of the main tools used in Indian music to produce tension and release. There's another important relationship that any note you play has, and that is to the notes you'd played before it or the notes after it. What those notes are and when you play them are both really important for creating a sense of tension or release. The notes of the pentatonic scale are really useful because they sound so good next to one another, and you can use them as a group and move them around so that they will continue to sound good next to one another even if they might sound dissonant relative to the root note, or sa. So that's what's done in some ragas where you use this ascending scale that is just the pentatonic notes where none of them are actually on a consonant note. And then on the way back down again, you add a sense of release by adding in consonant notes such as sa, pa, the first and the fifth. So as a quick reminder from last week, if you have that tone wheel that shows all the semitones laid out on a circle, the major pentatonic scale is our starting point, which is the first, the second, the third, the fifth, and the sixth. So now what we'll do is shift that pattern around so that none of the notes line up with the most consonant notes of the scale, that being the first, the fourth, and the fifth. The first place where this happens is starting from the second. These are the notes of the D major pentatonic scale, or you could also think of them as the B minor pentatonic scale. The raga that uses this pentatonic scale in its ascent, or arroy, is Rag Yaman. And I've already done an entire video on this raga, so I won't go into this one in too much detail, but suffice to say that it is the B minor pentatonic scale on the way up, and then you add in the 1 and the 5 on the way down. So let's shift the pattern up to the next one. This one is the E major pentatonic scale. But we'll play it again over the top of a C drone, and I'll start from a B, so that you start on the major 7. And then on the way back down, the avroy, or descending scale, is the same pentatonic notes plus the C and the G, the 1 and the 5, or in Indian terminology, sa and pa. And that is the ascending and descending scale of Rag Puriya Dhanashri. So if we unpack this raga a little bit, you'll notice that the notes of that E major pentatonic scale starting from the B are the major 7, the flat 2, the 3, the sharp 4, the flat 6, and then around again. So there was no 1, no 5, no 4. It was very open and unresolved. So you can continue up and down that scale as much as you want and never have to worry about it feeling like you've finished. And then when you do want to finish or start a new one, you can then add in a C or a G, the 1 or the 5. So that 5th note is actually quite an important note in the raga. But it's one that you would leave out a lot to keep this sense of I'm not done yet, and then you land on it. Indian music has a number of different rhythmic cycles that it's played in. These cycles are called tala, and the one I was using in the demonstration was called teen tal, a rhythmic cycle of 16 beats. I'll be doing a whole series of videos on the rhythmic elements in Indian music, but for now, let's just look at the space between 2 consecutive beats and use that area for our dissonance. I'll enlist the help of me to play tabla and start that 16-beat cycle, and over the top I'll play the ascending scale of Puriya Dhanashri, but in the gaps on the offbeats between the downbeats of the tabla until you get to the first beat of the cycle, and then I'll land on that. So you notice that the last note, which was the note that resolves the phrase on that 5th, was also the note that landed on the first beat of the cycle. So you're using the rhythmic tension and the melodic tension together. But it was a little bit clunky having to race that last note to land on the first beat when all the others were on the offbeat. So an alternative approach is to use dotted crotchets, or 1.5 beat lengths for each note. So there the notes alternated between being on an offbeat and then being on a downbeat, and then finally landing on a downbeat on the first beat of the cycle. We can continue this idea further, where now you can play a group of 5. Now we're going to make a 3.5 beat pattern. So it's actually 7 half beats, if you like, divided into 2, 2, and 3. We can continue moving up that pentatonic pattern. The next place I found that works really nicely and actually has a raga that corresponds to it is the A major pentatonic scale. And that one sounds like this over a C. That's the Arroy, or the ascending scale of Rag Marwa. To get the descending scale, the Avroy, you then add in the C. But I'm still starting and ending that scale on the A, which in C would be the note Dha, and that note is very important in Rag Marwa. Rag Marwa is quite unusual in that there is no perfect fourth, no perfect fifth. So there's very few places where you can rest, very few places where there is consonance. It's continuing on with the idea of rhythmic variation and creating tension and release with rhythm. You would have noticed during that demonstration that over the course of 4 beats, I might play 4 notes or 3 notes or 5 notes or 6 notes. In India, this is called chand, and in Western theory, it would be called tuplets. So triplets or quintuplets or septuplets, things like that. So to hear that idea more clearly, I'll slow the tempo of the tabla down so that you hear 1 beat per second. And then over the top of that, you can then put 1 note per beat, or 2 notes per beat, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and then back again. As the number of notes per beat gets higher, you've got more of the scale that you can play before you get to the next beat. The last place to shift the major pentatonic scale is to the B, so 1 semitone below the root note C, and you get this sound. Then land on the C and come back down using the C and the G. These are the notes of Rag Todi. So the last rhythmic idea we'll look at is note groupings. So we'll grab groups of 3 notes, 4 notes, 5 notes, and rather than play them all in one beat, so make more notes faster so that they squeeze in, will let them extend out over into the next beat. And so you get a rhythmic phrase moving through the cycle. You can then combine these groups of notes into larger ones. So you might grab 2 3s and a 2 to make an 8. And then where you put those 2s is entirely up to you. Now, while Indian music doesn't use chords, there's nothing stopping you as a guitarist from experimenting with some of these scales, playing the notes simultaneously over the root note and getting some interesting chords, such as this one, which is a nice C minor with a major 7 and a flat 5. But in the absence of chords, Indian music uses these melodic and rhythmic ideas to create tension and release in the music. So hopefully you can now take some of these ideas and add them to your playing too. So that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, and I have to say a big thanks to all my Patreon supporters, in particular Joseph Bromley, who is supporting me at the Backstage Pass level. If you'd like to join the family over on Patreon, please follow the link in the description. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.